What are lessons every manager can learn from McDonald's? This isn't about food. It's about lessons that every manager can learn based on a lawsuit against McDonald's former global head of HR. In this short video, we'll talk about what happened at McDonald's and the practical lessons that managers should know no matter what your organization. What happened at McDonald's was that in 2015, after a slump in sales, McDonald's promoted an executive, Stephen Easterbrook, to become CEO. And Stephen Easterbrook promoted David Fairhurst to become the global chief people officer. Now, in allegations in lawsuits now, it's said that both Stephen Easterbrook and David Fairhurst encouraged and permitted and allowed a party atmosphere, a boys' club, with heavy drinking and excessive partying. Now, during this time, David Fairhurst was actually, despite being global chief people officer, himself accused of sexual harassment. And in this, the board looked into it, and they allowed him to remain in his role, but put in additional measures, harassment training, things like that, and supposedly a last chance letter that basically said, we really mean it, you can't do anything anymore. Well, at the time, Stephen Easterbrook himself, despite being CEO, engaged in a relationship with an employee, and it was said that David Fairhurst did not adequately address that at the time. So in 2019, after the relationship came to light and a lot of media attention, McDonald's terminated Stephen Easterbrook. And then shortly after, when their general counsel said they had information that showed that David Fairhurst, who was the global chief people officer, had violated his last chance letter, they terminated his employment as well. But that was all in 2019. So what's happening now? Shareholders of McDonald's filed what's called a derivative lawsuit. This means that those that own stock in the company can sue and say that directors, officers, someone that owes a duty of loyalty to the corporation failed to live up to that duty of loyalty, made mistakes, and they were so egregious that the company should pay the shareholders for the lack of value of the company. Basically, things happened, the directors and officers, that made the stock go down, and the shareholders want their money back. So shareholders filed this in part based on David Fairhurst's actions, saying that as global chief people officer, he not only engaged in sexual harassment himself, but also failed to take action against the CEO and address that. And that led to scandals, strikes, media attention that caused McDonald's stock to drop. So the shareholders in this derivative lawsuit filed it against McDonald's as a corporation, its board, Steve Easterbrook as former CEO, and David Fairhurst as former chief people officer. Now, in a legal proceeding, David Fairhurst filed what's called a motion to dismiss, basically saying no matter what the shareholders say, even if all of that is true, they can't win because there's no legal claim. The shareholders really focused on David Fairhurst, saying he owed a duty of oversight. David Fairhurst said no such thing under Delaware law. Well, last week or 2 weeks ago, the Delaware Court of Chancery, which is the court that oversees these in Delaware, which is a really corporate-focused jurisdiction, they said, not quite. This can go forward, that the plaintiffs, the shareholders, did say enough that they could potentially win, or at least get to discovery. So this was a blow to David Fairhurst and the McDonald's suit overall, because it says it's at least possible that there can be a legal claim that's upheld. What does this mean for McDonald's? It means for now, the lawsuit's allowed to continue. So it'll go to discovery, which means exchanging documents, information, depositions. It's extremely costly from a time and expense standpoint. And the court has said that the duty of loyalty and that level of oversight can depend on the specific role and the involvement in the organization. So all that will be fleshed out. But what does that mean for managers that aren't at McDonald's, like you? For managers at any organization, regardless of size, industry, whether well-known or not, it is incredibly important to have oversight and systems and processes to do so, meaning that if an employee has a concern, they know exactly where to go, whether that's their manager, HR, another leader, sometimes a third-party hotline. It can depend. But then also that those individuals that are tasked with hearing concerns, which often can include any manager, they know exactly what to do. In the McDonald's lawsuit, for example, the Delaware court said that the level of oversight can depend on the role, but that companies that have good oversight, the leaders that receive those concerns, they're able to actually act on them or escalate those to a more senior leader who can do so. So in your organization as a manager, I tell people all the time, it's really important for managers to go back and read the handbook and look at some of those policies. You may have EEO, Equal Employment Opportunity policies, open door policy, general concerns policy, and look and understand, are those policies directing employees to come to you? Also, managers need to have training. Often courts, like in this McDonald's case, but also employees expect that when managers hear a concern, they know what to do about it in the proper way. So making sure that you have clear policies, those individuals that are tasked with hearing concerns actually have training. Because rarely is a manager that hears a concern going to be the one that handles it in a silo. Often they may need to involve HR or senior leadership. In our investigations videos, we talk about how that's as confidential as possible. But basically, having policies that are clear on where people need to go, and as a manager, making sure that you understand exactly what's expected and what that process looks like, are basic levels of oversight that every organization is expected to have. Again, by courts, but also by employees when they have those concerns. Because you can look at headlines like this McDonald's lawsuit, other verdicts that come in court cases, but also you can look at Glassdoor. How frequently do you see comments of people saying, this was a total boys club. It was against the values that they have written in the handbook or on the wall. Because the employee experience and how employees feel when they have a concern and how that's looked into, and if they feel like an organization may say all day long what their values are, but what happens in practice is the complete opposite, that has an impact on the organization, potentially legally, but also from a reputational perspective. And so the biggest control that you have as a manager is to make sure that if you hear about anything, and even if you don't see it, you just hear rumors of it, that you do what's expected of you to address it and ensure that it's escalated up the ladder. Because situations like this can happen to companies as big as McDonald's and as small as mom and pops. And if you're a manager and you don't have that training, there's ways to get it. We offer it at Manager Method. We have harassment discrimination training in California, for example, for employees and supervisors. We have Manager 101 that handles in part exactly what to do when people raise concerns to make sure it's properly handled. But whatever you find, make sure that you have that training, both for your own success in your role and also for your employees, so that the right steps happen whenever they have concerns.